A word of caution. This episode features descriptions of kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder. Please take care when listening. An employee at Appalachian State University heads out for an early morning walk with plans to meet her parents after running errands. When she disappears, police zero in on a drifter from out of town as a possible suspect. A week later, a runner at the same university is abducted while out on a rural road, and what her assailant tells her could lead to a break in the first case if she can survive the ordeal and get to the police. What happened to these two young women has never been forgotten in the small community of Boone, North Carolina, and serves as a cautionary tale to incoming students each year. There is much to love about North and South Carolina, but the two states have also had their fair share of violent and senseless crimes over the years. From murders on the Blue Ridge Parkway, in the heart of big cities or sleepy college towns, and along the coastal waters, some of these stories may be new to you. Some may have happened in your town. Some may involve people that are still missing to this day. But all will leave you remembering to always be vigilant about the people you meet and the places you go. I'm Renee Robertson. Please join me for Missing in the Carolinas. Episode 111. The Murder of Jeni Gray and the Abduction of Leigh Cooper in Boone. Located in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains, Appalachian State University is a four-year college that also has a satellite campus in Hickory. The school was founded 125 years ago when Dr. B.B. Doherty, his brother D.D. Doherty, and Dee Dee's wife Lily began dreaming of a way to help children in the state participate in educational opportunities in the heart of the mountains. App State began as Watauga Academy, progressed to the Appalachian Training School for Teachers, then the 2-year Appalachian State Normal School, and later the 4-year Appalachian State Teachers College. The school now enrolls more than 21,000 students and has more than 150 undergraduate and 80 graduate majors. It offers 17 varsity sports, more than 20 club sports, and more than 80 ways to participate in intramural sports. The campus and surrounding town of Boone truly come alive during football season, when visitors don black and gold, set up tailgates for miles, and cheer along with the cannons that are fired every time the Mountaineers score a touchdown. Access to outdoor activities is a big draw for many students both in and out of the state, as they are close to ski slopes, whitewater rafting, hiking, kayaking, fishing, and much more. The main campus is located right in the heart of downtown Boone, and King Street offers plenty of places to eat, drink, gather, and shop for treasures at the local consignment and antique stores. There's also a robust performing arts scene. Employees at App State often joke about the Boonerang experience, where so many students either end up staying in the area after graduation or returning to work in the town or university not long after. They joke that they can't stay away. People instantly feel welcome in Boone, and that they are part of a close-knit community where people look out for one another. It's why two crimes that occurred in the fall of 1989 shocked the residents so much and stripped away that feeling of safety and security. It was also a cautionary tale that no matter how safe you feel in any given place, there's always a chance for evil to sneak in at any given moment. 27-year-old Jeni Gray was one of those people that enjoyed her time in Boone so much that she decided to eventually make it her permanent home. Originally from Durham, she graduated from Jordan High School in Durham in 1980. After receiving her bachelor's degree from App State, she worked for the Mount Airy News. In September of 1989, she was working as a writer with the Appalachian State University News Bureau. She was last seen around 6:30 a.m. on Sunday, September 24, 1989, by her two roommates. Jeni told them she had a lot of things she had to get done that morning before meeting her parents for 11 a.m. services at First Baptist Church in Boone. They lived out of town, and she was excited for their visit. At first, her parents were concerned when they couldn't find Jeni at the service. Then they thought maybe she'd gotten tied up talking to someone she knew in town. They called her apartment, and her roommates were concerned that she had missed the church service. Her car was located in the parking lot of the Watauga Democrat, which was where she normally parked before going out and walking a 2-mile loop that went through town. Her purse, wallet, and other belongings were found inside the car. Police completed 2 block-by-block searches of the downtown area of Boone and even sent divers into a nearby duck pond on campus during the search for Jeni. Her family, friends, and police were baffled as to what could have happened to her. They began to worry that she had gotten injured while out on one of the local trails. Jeni's roommate said her walk through town was a regular routine, and she always wore a blue tracksuit while out exercising. The crime series Sins and Secrets featured this story on Season 3, Episode 13 back in 2012. Investigators revealed that when Jeni disappeared, a man had been harassing women in town on that Sunday morning. He was targeting women who were walking alone or running. Police quickly tracked him down and discovered he was a drifter passing through town on the way to Tennessee. He admitted to bothering the women and agreed to take a polygraph, which he failed. But a failed polygraph does not give police the grounds to arrest someone without any other physical evidence, so they were forced to let him go, but kept him under a close watch. Women in the community became fearful after Jeni went missing. This was not a woman who would have left on her own. She was likely out exercising when she vanished. There were no signs pointing to her leaving suddenly on her own. Female students at App State and other local women were warned by the police not to run or walk alone and to implement a buddy system whenever they could. 7 days later, on October 1st, 1989, the local media reported that a 24-year-old local man named Daniel Bryan Leigh had been arrested and charged with rape, 3 counts of first-degree sexual offense, kidnapping, and armed robbery. His bond was set at $3 million. Sheriff James Lyons said the kidnapping had occurred in Boone, but the assault had occurred outside of town. At first, residents thought the arrest was tied to Jeni Gray. But if that was the case, why had she still not been found? Residents soon learned the latest victim was not Jeni Gray, and she still remained missing. The sheriff also would not tell the public if Daniel Leigh's alleged victim had been an App State student or employee. The media dug up all the information they could about the suspect. Daniel Bryan Leigh was a local who had attended Watauga High School and earned a high school equivalency certificate from Caldwell Community College. His father, Jacob, told the press that his son worked as a dishwasher at Blowing Rock Hospital, and that he wasn't sure what had happened after police took his son in for questioning. He mentioned Daniel had undergone brain surgery about 15 months earlier, after doctors discovered he had an aneurysm. To the public, it appeared that the Boone Police Department wasn't yet convinced the rape of this new Boone victim was tied to Jeni Gray's disappearance. The police chief, R. Zane Tester, said, "We are still looking at other options regarding Jeni Gray being missing, but obviously this arrest is leading us in a direction too." On October 2nd, the media published the name of the rape victim. She was Leigh Martin Cooper, a 20-year-old student at App State and a member of the university's cross-country team. Leigh said she'd gone for a run on Friday, September 30th. Before she left, she wrote a note for her boyfriend, explaining that she would be back from her run around 6:30 p.m. so they could go to dinner together. She did her normal 2-mile loop around campus before turning onto a secondary road off Highway 321. She was on Meadowview Drive when a white car blocked her path. The man inside pointed a gun at her and demanded she get in the car. Because she was on an isolated road with no other people around, she felt she had no choice but to get in the car. Leigh said the man drove around the back roads of Boone for about 20 minutes before stopping his vehicle. He bound her wrists with a bandana he had in the car. He asked her if she was an App State student and said he had been out looking for one. Then he brought up Jeni Gray's name and told Leigh he had killed her and that her body was about a half a mile up the road from where they were parked. Leigh later said she believed him when he gave the brutal details of Jeni's death and knew she needed to earn his trust and comply with his demands so that she might be able to find a way to escape. Daniel forced Jeni to smoke marijuana and take an aphrodisiac he had in the car, and then he sexually assaulted her for hours. He pointed a loaded gun at her head and played Russian roulette. He asked if anyone back home was expecting her, and she lied and said no. Then he told her he had decided not to kill her yet and wanted to take her back to his house. As night fell, he pulled into a roadside convenience store. Leigh said she hoped there would be a lot of people around, but they were the only customers. Daniel kept her wrists bound and warned her not to get out of the car. While he was inside, standing in front of the beer coolers, an SUV pulled into the parking lot. The male driver got out of the vehicle and went inside the store while Leigh tried to gather her courage. When the driver came back out, she noticed Daniel was still in the back of the store. So she exited the car and jumped into the SUV, telling the driver she'd been kidnapped and asking him to get her out of there quickly. The man drove to a nearby friend's house where they called 911. She discovered she was in the Rutherwood community between Boone and the town of Triplet. After Leigh was taken to the hospital, she told the police she had seen an envelope when her abductor opened up the glove compartment in his car. She was able to remember the name on the envelope, and that, coupled with a description of his car, led police to quickly apprehend Daniel Leigh at his residence. They knew he'd been arrested before for petty crimes like driving while under the influence and possession of marijuana. Leigh also told them he'd confessed to murdering Jeni Gray. Under her direction, police began searching a wooded area of US 321 south of Boone, where Leigh's assault occurred, but they turned up no sign of the missing young woman. When police couldn't locate Jeni's body, they were fearful Daniel Leigh was a copycat rapist who didn't really know where Jeni's body was. Plus, they still had the man from Tennessee who'd been harassing women the morning Jeni disappeared. They wondered if he was still involved. Leigh was adamant that they keep looking for Jeni. She believed Daniel Leigh had murdered her and would have done the same to Leigh if she hadn't escaped. He'd been fixated on abducting women connected to the university. On October 9th, a small crew from the police department re-canvassed the area where Leigh had taken them. It was about a half-mile from where the sexual assault on Leigh had occurred. This time, the results were different. They discovered the body of a young woman in an area near an unpaved secondary road at Jakes Mountain near Boone. A piece of jewelry she was wearing helped identify her as Jeni Gray. The North Carolina chief medical examiner determined her cause of death was strangulation, and she had also been beaten, likely with a bloody stick found near her body. This lined up with the details Daniel had shared about Jeni's death with Leigh. He was charged with first-degree murder, first-degree kidnapping, and first-degree rape. Before we continue, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. I'm a huge fan of the skincare products by SkinxErin. You've heard me talk about them before. I use their pre-cleanse oil, hydrating beauty oil, and perfecting night oil each day, and I swear my skin looks at least 10 years younger. I love that these products don't leave my skin feeling greasy and are loaded with squalene oil and vitamins E and A. Plus, they are extremely affordable, their customer service can't be beat, and the positive affirmations they include in the packaging are so uplifting. Go ahead and treat yourself with 10% off your order using my code MissingCarolinas10. I'll include a link in the show notes for you. Are you looking to level up your writing or learn a new skill? Whether you focus on nonfiction or are more inclined to creative writing, or want to learn how to put together a digital portfolio of your writing, Wow Women on Writing can help. Interested in podcasting? Check out a digital course I created called You Can Start a Podcast. During this pre-recorded webinar, you will learn the benefits of creating your own podcast, materials you need to get started, how to develop content that will keep listeners coming back for more, and ways your podcast can create supplemental income. I'll share examples of different types of podcasts, how to decide on a format, ways to handle the technology necessary for creating a podcast, how to develop your first few episodes, promotion and monetization ideas, and ways you can repurpose your podcast content. All written materials and resources are provided by me. I'll also give you a handout with information discussed in the webinar, along with suggestions for a few different types of podcasts to explore. Best of all, this webinar only costs $30. You can find it by going to wow-womenonwriting.com and clicking on the Classroom tab. I'll post a link in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show. In mid-December of 1989, a Superior Court judge ruled that Daniel Bryan Leigh was mentally competent to stand trial for murder in the death of Jeni Gray. The trial was moved to Avery County, as Daniel's attorneys argued that there had been too much pre-trial publicity for him to get a fair trial in Watauga County. But before jury selection could even begin, Daniel Leigh pleaded guilty to the murder. But he said he was innocent of the rape charge connected with her death. He admitted to abducting her while she was taking her walk in downtown Boone, later strangling her with her own sweatshirt and bra on Jake's Mountain, 3 miles away from his home. He claimed he was not guilty of the sex offense part of the crime because he had abused her, shooting a BB gun into her body cavity after her death. Police found strands of Jeni's hair in Daniel's car. Fibers in the vehicle also matched those of her clothes she was wearing at the time. Leigh Cooper testified during the sentencing hearing that Daniel said he had taken Jeni's watch and underwear, and these items were missing from her body when she was found. On April 26, 1990, Superior Court Judge Charles Lamb sentenced Daniel Leigh to 12 years for kidnapping Jeni Gray. He also sentenced the man to 4 life prison terms, plus 15 years on charges of kidnapping, rape, and sexual offense in the attack on Leigh Cooper. He would have to serve at least 100 years before being eligible for parole. After the sentencing, Jeni's father, Robert, told the media that he found no pleasure in the death sentence being handed down in the case. There are no winners in a case like this, and I take no glee or joy in the decision. Nothing's done that will bring Jeni back. He said his main objective was making sure Daniel Leigh never got out of prison again to hurt anyone else. In early January of 1997, Daniel Leigh died from a cerebral hemorrhage while still incarcerated, likely connected to the aneurysm he'd had in his early 20s. He was 33 years old. Leigh Cooper did not let what Daniel Leigh put her through deter her from achieving her goals. She eventually married the boyfriend she was dating at the time of her abduction and assault, Chris Wallace, and they had 2 children together. She became one of the most successful track and cross-country runners for App State, earned a degree in exercise science, and was inducted into the App State University Athletic Hall of Fame. She remained in the area and went on to become a Hall of Fame coach of cross-country and track at Watauga High School. She was also the first girls lacrosse coach at the school. She became a member of the Watauga County Sports Hall of Fame. Barbara Day, the former dean of students at Appalachian State University, said Leigh told her Daniel Leigh claimed he was going to go back to the school to get more girls after admitting his involvement in Jeni Gray's death. In Barbara Day's opinion, Leigh helped stop a potential serial killer. In 1990, App State began an annual Walk for Awareness, a silent walk that began after nightfall, and the event often included speakers on the importance of safety and crime prevention in honor of Jeni and Leigh, and it would continue for 30 years. The event ceased to exist in recent years, likely becoming the casualty of the COVID pandemic. Leigh had shared her story of survival through magazine articles and 2 different television shows. With the encouragement of her father, Claude, she decided to begin the process of working on a memoir. She would narrate pieces of her story into a cassette recorder a little at a time and turn the tapes over to her father to transcribe. Their plan was to organize and edit the book once it was all on the computer. Leigh had grown up the oldest of 4 children to Claude and Louise Cooper. The family moved around frequently as her father served in the U.S. Army, earning his way to being a lieutenant colonel. She was born in Panama, as her father was stationed there at the time, and they subsequently moved to Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and then back to North Carolina to Fort Bragg. Leigh discovered a love of swimming at age 11 and then began running with her dad when she was in 8th grade. Throughout her adolescence, Leigh exhibited a high tolerance for pain, even enduring pain from a knee injury until it required surgery. Like many young female athletes, she also developed body image issues as her upper body developed more muscular from swimming. While she excelled at both swimming and running, she eventually made the choice to focus on running. She enjoyed her solo runs and felt safe running on the various Army bases, even in the evenings. That sense of security and safety would continue into her college career. She used to joke with her friends in college that if someone tried to abduct her, she would simply outrun them. Leigh definitely had her challenges all throughout her teens and early 20s. She battled an eating disorder while experiencing shin splints and stress fractures from her training. Leigh overcame her injuries and focused on the things she could accomplish, like eating healthy and training in a safe way. She toured multiple colleges and felt the strongest connection with App State. Her parents moved to the area as well, and her father became a professor of military science and commander of the ROTC at App State, while her mother taught at local public schools. In 2016, Leigh's father, Claude, published a book titled Finding Strong. Leigh had begun writing that life story in the summer of 2012, but she died unexpectedly from pneumonia at age 43 before she could make it through the first draft, so her father carried it across the finish line. Here's what he said about the book on his website, Claude Cooper, Finding Strong. My daughter Leigh firmly believed there is a strong person in each of us. Her favorite saying was, "You're stronger than you think." It took her 20 years to find her true and complete strength. She always knew she had unusual physical strength, able to beat all the boys in her class in arm wrestling until 7th grade, and with an aerobic capacity and pain threshold that enabled her to run through pain and become an elite distance runner. A brutal and tragic near-death experience at the age of 20 revealed to Leigh her inner strength and helped her realize she was truly much stronger than she thought. After surviving that nightmare scenario, she dedicated the rest of her life to helping others find the strong within them. She wanted to make an impact, to make the best of her second chance at life. As a runner, coach, teacher, mentor, public speaker, and friend, Leigh changed people's lives. In terms of how to live, love, and laugh, she set the bar high. In 2018, Wayne Clawson wrote and published a book titled Jake's Mountain Road: The Murder of Jeni Gray, the Kidnapping of Leigh Cooper, and the Trial of Daniel Bryan Leigh. Clawson is a native of Boone who also graduated and played football for App State. After serving in the U.S. Air Force, he joined Appalachian State University and retired in 2004 after serving as the Associate Vice Chancellor for the school. He told the Watauga Democrat that he decided to publish the book after overhearing a discussion of Jeni and Daniel Leigh's trial. That's when he realized people were uninformed about what really happened in 1989. People also didn't know that when Jeni disappeared, she had been working with a psychologist on campus to analyze rape statistics on college campuses. Clawson had worked closely with Jeni at the university and wrote the book not long after her murder. He studied the trial transcriptions and interviewed several different people involved in the trial in the sentencing phase. He held off on publishing it, but after he overheard the conversation in the doctor's waiting room, he decided it was time to set the record straight. Proceeds from the sale of the book go to the Jeni Gray Scholarship Fund at App State and the Leigh Cooper Wallace Scholarship Fund at Watauga High School. In 2018, an App State alum and professor at Western Carolina University, Laura Wright, published a guest column in the Asheville Citizen-Times titled "Running While Female and Not Letting Danger Overpower Joy." She was writing in response to the murder of Molly Tibbetts, the young woman who was murdered while out on a run in Iowa. Wright talked about being a lifelong runner, attending App State in the late 1980s, and like Leigh Cooper Wallace and Jeni Gray, enjoying her solitary exercise around the small town. She was still a student when Jeni went missing, and Leigh was abducted. She said the crimes convinced her to stop running alone at night, often taking her workouts to treadmills or running with friends. She knew she could have been a victim herself. The crimes at App State, and the ones that have happened to other female runners like herself, have not deterred her from loving the sport. But she said she tries to maintain a balance between joy and the knowledge that safety and security can be taken away at a moment's notice. This brings us to the conclusion of this episode of Missing in the Carolinas. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and give it a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, so please like our pages and get started on a discussion of the missing people profiled on the show. Like what you hear? You can buy me a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com, Renee Robertson. I'm planning a series of episodes related to cybercrimes this fall and would love to hear from our listeners in the Carolinas. Do you have a story that features an online scam, a crime stemming from a dating app, or perhaps a catfishing story where someone used a fake identity to make you believe you had a friendship or romantic relationship? If so, I'm interested in hearing your story and possibly interviewing you for the podcast. You can email me at missinginthecarolinas@gmail.com with any details you can share. And don't forget to check out our sponsor, Wow Women on Writing, and the great programs and writing contests they have to support writers at wow-womenonwriting.com. Treat yourself to a skincare kit from SkinxErin with my code, MissingCarolinas10. Cover art for this podcast was designed by Macintosh Multimedia. Sound editing is provided by Daniel Robertson. Thanks so much for listening.